Welcome to the Hooked on Sport Cricket Show. This is South Australia's summer cricket wrap, where we uncover the stories, personalities and moments that define cricket across South Australia and beyond. It's time to talk cricket with Sophie Hilditch and Ben Hook.
Thanks, Wallace. I am extremely excited to spend the next 30 minutes talking about a sport often considered Australia's national summer sport. It's the game of cricket. And who best to talk to about it than my co-host, Ben Hook. Hookie, are you as excited as I am for today's pod?
On the edge of my chair, Soph, and I tell you what I am really keen to get into is talking cricket with you. I imagine there are a lot of people that are going to be thinking, what the heck does Sophie Hilditch know about cricket? I mean, people know that I know about cricket, a former first-class player, two-time Bradman medalist, and they know that because I remind them of it regularly. But just tell us about your history of cricket, your family involvement in cricket, and your own love of the sport as well.
Oh, it's a very fair question, Hookie. And yes, people probably are questioning because I've never even played cricket in my life, but I do come from a very strong family background of cricket. My grandfather was Bob Simpson, captain of the Australian cricket test side. My dad was Andrew Hilditch, and my brother actually still has some involvement in some local cricket, just recently taking up the assistant coaching job for Adelaide Uni. So, look, Hookie, I spend my time around family dinner tables often debating cricket, often more than not cricket selections as well. So I have a deep love for the game, and as always, I love arguing about things about cricket just as much as I do about any other sport. So
grandfather coach of Australia, your father played, it was probably a little bit before your time, but then went on to be chairman of selectors of the Australian team. Did he ever pick a team and you sort of raised an eyebrow at him over the dinner table?
Well, I think I was probably a bit too young at the time. He actually took up cricketing selecting when I was born. I think it was a pretty nervous conversation with my mum. I think she was about 7 months pregnant with me, and he came up to her and said, "They've just offered me the job." And she said, "Sounds like you want to take it. So sounds like I'm 3 children at home and you jetting off all around the world selecting a national side." But look, Cookie, we've actually had a few arguments since his time as a cricketing selector back at his selections back in the day.
Well, I'll tell you what, the one thing I'm going to be looking forward to is when this podcast goes to market and your father tunes in and then gives us some pretty hefty feedback, which I suspect might be coming our way.
Yeah, he's actually my boss at work too, Ben, and I'm waiting for the settled, which is underlined, or the GTG, which means good to go. But I don't think I'll be getting any GTGs from this, unfortunately. But Hookie, let's get going and let you give me Ben's best for the week.
Okay, well, I've got to go back a couple of days now, Soph, back to last week when South Australia took on Victoria in the one-day cup match. And Ben's best for the week has to be Nathan McAndrew. Late start to the season for him. South Australia really missed him. He's been an outstanding bowling all-rounder for about 3 or 4 years now. None better than last year. Was instrumental in what South Australia did over the course of the season. Came in against Victoria. South Australia were winless and really bowled us to victory there. We'd set 280 odd, which was sort of a reasonable total, and it did look like probably a slightly tougher wicket to bat on than what you think. But McAndrew just changed the game. He took wickets at the top, which was really important, had a breather, came back and took 3 wickets through that middle order, and South Australia went on to win that game pretty comfortably by 70 runs. He was so close to winning the Neil Danzy trophy for the best player for South Australia over the course of the whole year last year. Was probably unlucky to miss it to Liam Scott, another really high quality all-rounder for South Australia. But Nathan McAndrew, for that sort of comeback, he wins Ben's best for the week. What about Sophie Starr?
Yeah, that's a great decision, Hookie. A great one starting off the bat with Mick Andrew. Look, I'm actually taking a leaf out of my co-host book. I'm prepared for the yellow card and the punishment that may be coming. But this is our first cricket edition, so I want it noted when Wallace goes back over this that, look, rules have not been laid out. So today I'm actually choosing 2 Sophie Stars. Look, number 1, I'm sure she's going to be...
Yeah? Don't worry. The yellow card is already out.
I know it's coming. I knew it was coming. But look, I'm sure she's about to be spoken more today, and that's Alicia Healy, who's just led the Australian women to a win in the ODI World Cup against India, putting them to the top of the ladder. She scored 142 runs off 107 balls. This is her first century in any format since the 2022 World Cup final, and her first as Australian captain, and it actually created a record chase for the team. So I'd be amiss if I didn't put her as Sophie's star. But it was a close call, Hookie, because I know this is a cricket show.
Yes.
But I can't not talk about South Australian Caitlin Adams, who we just interviewed. She's won the Melbourne Marathon on the weekend. It's her debut marathon. She's an inspirational person. And I'm sorry, Hookie, I had to mention her. I'm sorry.
Batter or bowler?
Neither, but I think if she had a choice, maybe bowler at the way she could get some pace up.
You reckon? I reckon she'd bowl little off spinners, and I reckon she would be very handy in the covers as a fielder. She would be able to cover the ground extraordinarily quickly. Love what you've done. Caitlin Adams, we did an interview with her. It is up on our platforms now. So if you have any interest whatsoever in A, cricket, and B, running, well, go and listen to Caitlin Adams and her story from Wallaroo to Adelaide, living with all of the stars of Australian distance running, and now a star of Australian distance running in her own right. So good choice, Caitlin Adams. I'll give you a little pass this time. I know you were never quite so generous with me when it came to my power rankings, but I'm very happy to hear your two Sophie star for the week. Alyssa Healy, what a genuine star she is, and Caitlin Adams, that was an incredible performance on Sunday.
Well, I'm going to take that pass and absolutely run with it. And let's jump into some news around the globe. As I actually just mentioned, Australia just beat India with a record chase of 330 runs in the Women's World Cup. Our girls are currently sitting at the top of the ladder. Thoughts on the match, Hookie?
Yeah, so an amazing chase. It's the biggest chase ever in the history of women's one-day international cricket. And I think most people thought, well, two things. One, that India were on the way to getting sort of 370, 380, and that 330 was probably a bridge too far for the Australians. A couple of things they did very, very well. At 1 for 192 after 30 overs, just do the maths on that. India were in such a dominant position as the batting team. Australia could have easily panicked or thrown in the towel, and they didn't do that. They worked some plans out. Annabelle Sutherland came in and bowled beautifully to take 5 for 40, and that restricted India to 330. It seems a funny thing to say when no one had ever chased that down in the history of the game before, but the defence from Australia in that second half was really important. Then they made the conscious decision to absolutely go gangbusters out of the gate when there's only two fielders outside the circle for the first 10 overs. So they really got ahead of the game early, and it is very, very difficult to score fast from sort of overs 11 to 40 in the women's game when the bowling attack still has a reasonable quality of ball, but they can set a far more defensive field. Australia worked out their way of just making sure they kept ticking the score over, never let the run rate get too far. And then Elise Perry, of course, she retired hurt and came back and then played just a real starring innings at the end. So I think Australia needed 60 runs still when Alyssa Healy was dismissed in controversial circumstances, dismissed regardless. And the fact that they just held their nerve, it got down to the bottom order. I think number 9, Kim Garth, was in at the time, and they never panicked. I tell you, I've got to say, Soph, this is an absolute tribute to Shelley Nitschke, who is a South Australian and someone we're incredibly proud of as a coach. She has cut her teeth on the women's game. She knows it inside out. It would have been very easy for her to get stressed, and that stress ekes out amongst the group, but she is doing such a wonderful job with this group. They're all all-rounders. They all understand their role, and that manifested itself in a critical win, and we'll see where they end up. I think they play Bangladesh on Thursday night, and then they've got a couple of big games coming up, most notably England in the middle of next week. So, excited to see where they end up. I'm worried that they meet India in a semi-final, who are 2 wins from 4 now, and you know that India are going to produce probably a diabolically bad wicket that will suit their spin attack, and it could be a bit of a lottery. But look, Australia doing everything right so far.
Yeah, 100% Hookie. I completely agree. Like you said, actually Australian women have struggled against India to take wickets early, and that was obviously still really noticeable in this game. But like you said, Annabelle Sutherland with a 5 for 40 was instrumental in the game. And we then went and showed our confidence in the batting depth of the order. And look, like you said as well, though, it was a pretty flat wicket. So I think if we face India in the semi-final, we might have some concerns. But let's go.
The Sutherland family, some talent there, Soph.
Yeah.
And you've got a talent. You're a talent in a talented family. But Annabelle's got a brother playing first class cricket, and another brother who plays off about +3 or +4 at Royal Melbourne. So it's decent talent across the family, I'd suggest.
Oh, yeah, I think some hand-eye coordination might be coming into play there. Now, what did you make of Travis Head and Pat Cummins both rejecting $10 million to quit Australian cricket and play the IPL T20 cricket full-time?
Yeah, so go and play for franchises full-time that are run by the IPL. Not surprised the offers come up. A little bit surprised it was only 10 million, to be honest. I would imagine these guys are worth vastly more than that. You think... I mean, my best guess is that Pat Cummins is on around about 3.5 to 4 million as the captain of Australia, and then everything that he picks up outside of the game probably isn't too far short of 10 million anyway. So I would have thought that if you're going to try and weasel those sorts of guys who are passionate about playing Test cricket for Australia out of that sort of role, it's probably got to be something more like 20, 30, 40, 50 million. Hey, the Indian IPL franchises can afford those sorts of things. I'm not surprised these guys knocked it back. But this is coming, isn't it? We are going to see, and we're all already seeing it happen in parts, that guys are retiring, in particular from white ball forms of the game, and most notably one-day cricket, to try and give themselves the greatest opportunity to play franchise cricket. Are we far away from the cricketer who says, no, don't offer me a contract for Australia because I prefer to play for clubs around the world? I don't think we're there just yet, but we're probably not far away. Soph, what do you think?
Yeah, Hookie, look, I tend to agree. I'm so too not surprised that Heady and Cummins turned it down. I mean, it's a real honour, and it still is in our nation to play Australian Test cricket, and I don't think that's going away anytime soon, but I think there is a risk. Look, cricket players are amongst the top earners domestically, but you've got to look at Australians competing over in America in the NFL and the NBA. They're making way more money than what they are for the cricketers, and I think playing for a private ownership is about to take over the cricketing world, unfortunately. Yeah,
cricketers are one of the highest, the male cricketers are the highest paid athletes in Australia, but on the world stage, they're
nowhere
probably
close.
Coming in, unders a little bit. So that'll be interesting to see. Of course, why would Travis want to take 10 million from his IPL franchises when he's selling all of that Bleasdale wine anyway? So the front page of the paper. Hey?
Look, I'm looking that now. That is something that I'm very, very interested in. Maybe a vino watching the Ashes this year will be great. Now, talking about the Ashes, we've got to speak about it. It's coming up. Team selection for the Australians are looking a bit up in the air. What are you making of our batting order coming up?
I've got a pretty left of centre batting order. I don't think the selectors are going to go for mine. Just before I get to mine, which is kind of crazy, who do you think they will start with? So top three, is it going to be Constas? Is it going to be Khawaja? I think it probably will be Khawaja. Is it Labuschagne, or do you think someone else?
Look, I think it's pretty definite going to be Khawaja. Pretty old though, coming up to, you'd think, almost retirement. But look, you need the experience up in that opening order, particularly playing the Ashes. And look, maybe left of field, but I reckon Constance. I reckon we need some youth into that team, and I think they need to give him a chance, at least in the first Test match. What are you thinking?
Well, I would be thinking as fewer changes as possible, but honestly, I would have made the decision after the West Indies to leave Usman Khawaja out of the Australian Test team. I would have said, You've had an amazing career. We will send you off in style, but it is time to move on. And I would have looked at the way England have picked their fast bowlers, and I would have looked at someone who can fight fire with fire. I would have started with Sam Constas. I think that's fine. But I would have brought Mitchell Marsh back in to open the batting for Australia at Test level. I've heard Greg Chappell talk about Mitchell Marsh, and it does make some sense to me. I think we're going to see some spicy wickets throughout Australia, and you're going to need to find someone who can get some runs before he does find a way to get out. And that's going to be inevitable in the way this game's going to be played. So if it was up to me, my Australian 11 would be Constas, Marsh, Green, Smith, Head, Webster, Carey, and then the bowlers. And I reckon if we're really serious about trying to beat England to the Ashes, which we're going to need to do, we're going to need to play some really positive cricket and find a way of scoring runs quickly before people get out. then to my mind, that's the best way of doing it, picking Mitchell Marsh instead of Usman Khawaja. Controversial, but that's what I'd do.
Yeah, massively big call. Well, talking about the bowlers, Pat Cummins, it's looking like he's going to be out for at least the first test. His back stress fracture has not yet healed. Look, first test, it might be more than that. What are you thinking is going to happen there?
I think it's a huge loss for Australia, perhaps bigger than we realise. I think because we need two players to replace him. One is going to be Scott Boland, the Victorian bowler who's done a wonderful job at test level, and the other is Steve Smith, who has to take over the captaincy role. And the reason why England have sort of made noises that they're not too upset about Scott Boland is because, as good as he's been, he's not Patrick Cummins. And Steve Smith, as a solid leader as he is, he's not Pat Cummins. And I heard this beautiful description about it during the week. I think it might have been Gideon Haigh, who described Cummins' leadership as low-temperature captaincy. He just has this calmness amongst the chaos that's really important to the Australian team. No Cummins is an enormous loss for Australia. And quite frankly, Sophie, could be the difference between Australia retaining the Ashes and losing them on home soil.
Yeah. It's going to be a huge loss, and you make a good point. Boland is the likely replacement, but they're going to target him, and if they're successful, look, it's going to put a lot of pressure on Stark and Hazelwood, who are going to have to back sooner and bowl more overs, and that's going to be a lot of stress on those bowlers.
And both of those guys, Josh Hazelwood in particular, aren't particularly robust themselves. Josh Hayward has had injury troubles throughout the last 3 or 4 years, and the last thing we're going to need is to go back even further into the depths of our bowling stocks, because as much as we've got some good bowlers around the place, they're unproven at test level as yet, and that's been part and parcel of the fact that we've kept picking just from these 5 guys. And, who knows? Can Brendan Doggett stand up? Is it Fergus O'Neill? Is it one of the boys from Western Australia like Jai Richardson makes another return at it? That's a real unanswerable for Australia at the moment, and one area of potential weakness for us.
Yep, and one question I probably don't want answered in the Ashes, Hookie, as to whether or not they're up to it. Now, look, enough about talking about our Australians. How about we jump around the nation and start talking about some domestic results that have happened recently? Look, SA went down in the Sheffield Shield to Victoria by 4 wickets. They lost the toss and were put in. They had a very good first day, but unfortunately couldn't quite make it over the line. What did you make of it?
Well, it's a pretty good assessment, Soph. They did play really well on the first 2 days, but then Peter Hanscom and Fergus O'Neill got together. They put on 125 for the 7th wicket, and that was a real killer for South Australia. So where you thought they might have got to the end of the first innings with a 100-run lead, it became a 7-run lead. South Australia in the second innings, then no wicket for 33. They lost 5 for 49 from there, and that's just not going to cut it at first-class level. So they end up with a lead of 231. Vic did a really good job of the chase. Fergus O'Neill again thwarted us. Ollie Peake has an enormous future. One thing I've got to say about Ollie Peake, everyone's talking about the concept that he was dropped first ball by Henry Hunt at short leg. Henry Hunt had a ball smashed into him by Oliver Peake that if it had have been caught, it would have been the greatest freak fluke of all time. That was uncatchable, and I don't want anyone to think that Henry Hunt cost us the game or something there, because that's a completely unreasonable thing to be thinking. So, look, a lot of positives to take out of that for South Australia, but here we are now defending the title. We're 0 from 1. I mean, we got off to such a flyer this time last year. If you're determined to A, play in the final, and B, host it, you've got to start getting some wins pretty quickly. That starts on Thursday against Queensland at Adelaide Oval.
We're talking about great starts.
Starts tomorrow, I beg your pardon. Thursday. Yeah. Forget Thursday, it's tomorrow.
So it does start tomorrow. We're talking about not the best of starts. In the One Day Cup, SA started 0 for 2, but they've just turned the tables on Victoria, and they defeated Victoria by 79 runs in a good all-round performance. They again lost the toss, so maybe something's going on there, and they're again put in. Look, you obviously spoke about Mick Andrew at the start with his amazing performance, but what did you make of the actual game?
Yeah,
the rest of
so
it.
the 11 o'clock starts is interesting. That's a new thing for South Australia. Simon Ingsley, the head of cricket, has decreed that 10 o'clock is a bit early to start these matches. So they'll start at 11 from here on in. I think it's a great decision because we have notoriously seen wickets be very fresh with 10 o'clock starts, in particular in October here in South Australia. Got to give some credit to Jake Lehman. What a renaissance he's been, sort of like a second coming of his career. Made a really important 85, batting at number 5 for South Australia. If there's a negative, it's that we had 7 batters exceed 20. Lehman was the only one who got past 34. So a little bit wasteful there. I think I might have said when we're talking about McAndrew, that wasn't the easiest wicket to bat on. McAndrew exploited it really well. So we've had a slow start in this competition, lost our first 2, but combined with the Shield loss, this was an important one to win, and we did. And that was a great result for South Australia, and it just resets them a little bit, which is important.
100% resets them. It's still going to be a battle to look at making those finals, obviously, with the poor start, but at least we're on the track and hopefully turning the corner. All right, Hookie, we're backtracking a little bit, but as our listeners know, we're actually only going to the cricket every fortnight. The South Australian women split 1-1 the series against Tasmania. I know you saw both games. So what did you make of it?
Yep. Pretty simple story here, Soph. In game 1, South Australia made 330. It was on the back of Maddie Penner, who made a glorious 109. I think her third first class, or what do they call it, List A domestic 100. Courtney Webb, 123 not out. She has just been in superlative form for South Australia and getting her opportunities now at Australia A level. So that set up the victory for Australia. Tasmania were never really in the hunt with the chase, but game 2, completely different story. Again, we're batting first. Emma Dubrow got the most unplayable ball I've ever seen to start that match from Nicola Carey, clean bowled. Then the 2 Centurions came to the crease and they made 232 between them in game 1. They made 18 between them in game 2. So that was probably the difference between the two sides and why Tasmania pretty comfortably chased down those runs in the second game, just 4 wickets down. A couple of notes I've got here. Eleanor LaRosa looks like the most exquisite cricketer we are going to see. Wonderfully gifted left-hand bat. She can also bowl left arm. We're yet to see it this year, but she is a real exciting prospect, and we'll be talking about her throughout the summer for sure, Soph. Isa Majolio played her first game for South Australia. I bumped into her and had a very brief chat beforehand, mainly so I can understand how to pronounce her surname, which is not easy. She was cut by New South Wales, thought her List A career at this level was done. Got picked up by South Australia and then played in the first game. She was almost in tears in the morning of the game. She was that excited about getting that red South Australian cap. And she bowled beautifully. She bowls leg spin. It's a tough job for a young kid to do, but she was excellent that first game. Picked up her first ever wicket, which was Rachel Treneman. Bowled a beautiful leg spinner, tossed it up, drew her out of her crease. The ball dropped on Treneman, who skied it. Gemma Barsby, the captain, took the catch. Now, I reckon Isa will need back surgery the way Gemma jumped on her. She was that excited with the wicket. It was great to watch. The skipper knew what it meant for Isa, and I think the rest of us at the ground did as well. So, 1-1 for South Australia. Bizarre program. Everyone had the week off for the October long weekend, and then they had a second weekend off for the bye because there's 7 teams in the competition. Now we go to the Spring Challenge, then we go to the WBBL. So South Australia's played 2 games against Tasmania. Their next game's after Christmas. Crazy scheduling. You think the men's scheduling is ridiculous. The women's is a bit ridiculous as well. But South Australia not badly placed at 1-1 against Tasmania, who have been a very, very good team the last 3 or 4 years.
Okay, interesting games for our South Australians. But what's happened around the state with the club results have been equally as interesting. We started it off with a tie between Glenelg and the Northern Districts. Now, I reckon Glenelg at home probably had a better lineup on paper and probably be disappointed with this result. What do you think?
Yeah, so we're talking about the One Day Cup, which is the Saka Premier first grade 50-over competition. Tie, as you said, Soph, between the Seahorses and the Jets. Damon Kerr, good wicketkeeper batter, was batting with Jarrah Reedy, who's the number 11 batter for Glenelg. I watched this at the end. Kerr ran one off the spinner to short third man. Reedy came for the match-winning single. It was a very, very tight call at the keeper's end. The keeper broke the stumps for Northern Districts, and it was bizarre because I don't think anyone really understood what the score was. Everyone was just sort of standing around like that. You know, the emoji that you send when you're not sure what someone's talking about? You send this one with the two arms up either side. So, yeah, the live stream vision was quite hilarious, actually. So, as you said, great result for Northern Districts. They were away at Glenelg, a club that is struggling a little bit at the moment. Glenelg have just come 2 years ago. They were in the grand final of the Division 1. So, yeah, Glenelg will be a little bit disappointed to cough that one up, a win anyway, at home, and had to settle for a tie.
Yeah, and look, Hookie, we then go on to some more simpler games. Sturt defeated Adelaide by 55 runs. West Torrens defeated Kensington by 5 wickets. Tea Tree Gully, they belted Woodville by 157 runs. Poor Woody just out of Division 1. I think they might have their work cut out for them. Port chased down Adelaide Uni's 221 with 5 wickets in hand. Any comments on this game, Hookie? I've got a personal connection, so I'm not going to comment too much.
Look, I'll say a couple of things. One is Will Forster is one of the most underrated players in this competition. He bats in the middle order for Port Adelaide and always seems to be able to make a contribution when they're most needed. Mm-hmm. Union Division 2, I think they're probably the best team in Division 2, and I expect them to win the premiership this year and come back up. But one stat stood out to me. 3 uni guys got to 40 this week. None of them got to 50. I reckon someone needs to have a quiet word to their batting coach about what's going on there.
Yeah, well,
who was their batting coach?
Yeah, I happen to know their batting coach. I believe he's got the same last name as me, so maybe we'll have some words. Maybe that's our Sunday night dinner table conversation if I want to cross that line.
Sort that out over the dinner table, Soph.
And look, last game for the men's, it was East Torrens. They were way too good for the Southern District, so they got over the line. Personal shout out to fellow golfer, and well, he's not a teammate because he obviously plays for the men's, but Josh Barrett, he completely obliterated his old club. Completely.
134 of 124 balls. So, yeah, Southern District all out 149 in reply. They're both Division 2 sides, but Southern District, they just look a little bit off the pace this year. Riley Endersby and Tim Stewart took 4 wickets each. That's commendable against the Tide. But you do wonder where Southern District are going to score enough runs from this year. So, it could be another tough year for the Stingrays, I fear.
Yeah, and look, let's go over to the women. Hookie, they had 4 games between the 5 clubs at 25 on Sunday. Adelaide, Kensington and Glenelg all played 2 games back to back. Bit tough, I think. I would have been a bit tired after that one. But look, Kenzie defended 122 in a thriller match against Glenelg, 121 in the grand final rematch. Now, something pretty interesting happened in this game. Please explain what happened with the last ball.
It absolutely did, Soph. I reckon only Kensington could win a match like this, and I reckon only Glenelg could lose a match like this. Ella Wilson was on strike. She'd hit the previous ball for 4. It was 2 to win, 1 to draw. And Kensington, Sarah Lowe, their skipper, I'm certain, I'm watching the live stream, had set the field to restrict to 1 run. They were prepared to give up 1 run and take the tie, but they didn't want to try and concede 2 runs and give up the loss. Now, Maddie Penner was bowling, and I want to discuss her shortly. I know we're running out of time, but please just ask me a question about Maddie Penner. She bowled a full toss down leg side. Ella Wilson somehow got struck by it in the midriff. She collapses to the ground. Bridget Patterson, who's the wicketkeeper for Kensington, picks it up and breaks the stumps. So no run, end of the game. No ball call, which I'm stunned by, to be honest. I mean, I'm written down here that it looked marginal. I thought it was a no ball, quite frankly. I mean, Penner was apologising to the batter, Ella Wilson, which probably indicates that it was a ball that was probably illegal. But yeah, Kensington somehow, when they'd almost conceded the result, got away with a win. So that was just a strange game of cricket.
Yeah, extremely strange. Look, we then go on to Adelaide. Adelaide's 139 runs was too much for West Torrens. Adelaide finished a big day with a win over the Premiers Kensington, and I'm assuming this might be where you want to talk to me about Penner, because look, curiously, Kenzie posted 4 for 102, batting first. That's not a lot of wickets. So what happened out there in the middle of the field?
Yeah, they got Patterson, Doddridge, Penner and Lowe all in that team. All of them had time in the middle, and they finished with 4 for 102 from 20 overs. So strange. That's not a very, very difficult scoring ground either, Park 25. So whether the wicket had something in it, I couldn't quite get a handle on or what. I mean, Adelaide didn't necessarily charge them down in a hurry. They only got them in the last over. So an important win for Adelaide, who I think finished second last in this competition last year. So they're at the top at the moment with a couple of really important wins. So that was incredible for them. I'll make this point about Maddie Penner. She's a Saka contracted player, and she was playing at West Torrens last year. And for whatever reason, she moves to Kensington that have won the last 4 flags. Why, oh why, would the South Australian Cricket Association, that would, I'm sure, like to see a bit of an even go in these competitions, allow one of the best players for South Australia to move from one of the poorer clubs and go to one of the best clubs? I just think it would be incumbent upon the SACA to say, yeah, we understand free trade and all of those sorts of things, but you're staying at West Torrens, kid. That's part of your deal as a contracted player for us. I just think it's wrong that we're sort of stacking one of the teams in a 5-team competition. If West Torrens struggle, and they've got some good kids in there, but what I don't want to see is West Torrens go, actually, this is all too hard and we're out of first grade as well. I mean, we've had women's cricket for a long, long time, and we've still only got 5 first grade teams. The SNFL has worked it out. A whole lot of Adelaide Footy League clubs have worked it out. And the SACA is yet to get some depth into their women's competition. Sending Maddie Penner to Kensington does not help.
Yeah, 100%. We really don't want that dropping from 5 to 4, Hookie. And look, last game, Sturt actually made it a miserable weekend for the Seahorses, winning against them as well. Now, Hookie, I know you love your community sport, so can you please just humour me and give me a community cricket highlight, but make it quick.
I want to tell you about Yashwanth Reddy Redham. He plays for the Port District Footballers Cricket Club. They've just gone in Division 1 this year. They've landed a couple of big signings. Travis Wordsworth, who's been a star of Adelaide Turf for Para Hills, has come over to Port District. Now, Yashwanth Reddy Redham last summer was playing LO Division 2 with Blue Brigade. He played in the winter cricket competitions for a lot of these cultural community teams. He was playing for the Warriors in Division 3 of SACA Winter Cricket. He played for the Punjabi Falcons. He played for the Amaravanti Avengers. He played 14 winter matches in all of these competitions. And so if you'll know them, you drive around on a Sunday morning and you see a hard wicket ground in the parklands and there's all of these blokes madly playing cricket in the middle of winter. Well, he took 6 for 58 in his first game at this level playing against Prince Alfred Old Collegians. So Yashwanth Reddy Redham, don't know much about you, mate, but you must love your cricket and you must be pretty talented as well, because that's a really impressive performance in Division 1 of Adelaide Turf first up.
Well, Hookie, I always love your community stories and you have absolutely topped it. That's a brilliant one.
There's plenty more where they come from, mate, I tell you.
I know there are. Well, Hookie, we're actually going to do our very own version of the Brownlow Medal and do a Hooked on Sport Cricket Player of the Year. I don't know if the players are going to be particularly interested, but you don't know. They might be actually fighting for this trophy at the end of summer.
They win a car?
Pardon?
Is it a car or a holiday? What's our prize for them?
Is the car in the budget? Because if it is, I need to have some serious conversations with you.
You'll be asking for a pay rise yourself?
Yeah, 100%. You heard about my Sydney weekend.
We're talking to all of our major partners about what the prize is going to be. But yes, our Brownlow version of the Hooked on Sport Player of the Year will be well looked after, I'm sure, well catered for. And over the course of the year, when it takes on greater and greater meaning, we look forward to presenting it at the end of the year.
We just want to explain to our listeners how it actually works, because I know it's normally a 3-2-1 dealio, but obviously the women don't play as many games as the men, and this is going to be gender neutral at Hooked on Sport.
Spot on, Soph. So yes, one of the South Australian women's players could win it just as easily as one of the South Australian men. And basically what we'll do, we'll get to the end of the year. If the men have played 18 games and the women have played 11, so forget the Adelaide Strikers here, this is just a South Australia competition, then we will weight it accordingly. We'll basically multiply the women's points by 18 and divide them by 11, so we get parity between the women and the men on the points that are available, and we'll have a winner at the end of the year. We could have a tie. It could be like the Bradman medal last year, a 4-way tie.
It could be. Do you know what, Hookie? Poor Wallace. Wallace currently has left us, again, unsupervised, and he's now just worked out he's doing some real math equations at the end of the season.
Yeah, we'll leave him to calculate that. You're not here, Wallace. We vote you.
Well, look, how about we get into it with our first picks of the fortnight? Why don't you start with a one-dayer for the men's?
Yeah, I'll go right back to our opening game. It was against New South Wales over there at the delightful Cricket Central. I'm making that up when I say delightful, Sophie. It's one of the most awful venues that you could possibly imagine in cricket. South Australia did go down, but I gave 3 votes to Mackenzie Harvey for his 60 runs, continuing on his great form in this competition from last year. I thought Wes Agar battled really well with the ball to finish for 2 for 40-odd from his 10 overs. He picks up 2 votes and 1 vote to Brendan Doggett. Unfortunately, he suffered an injury in that match, but he took 2 for 60 and made some runs late as well. So Mac Harvey, Wes Agar, Brendan Doggett, the votes in game number 1. You had a look at game number 2, Southern Australia versus Western Australia in the One Day Cup. What did you make of it? Who got the votes?
Yeah, like you said, Hookie, unfortunately, we didn't get up on this game either. But look, I've gone 3 points to Jordan Buckingham. He had 2 for 33. 2 points for Mac Harvey with an outstanding 75. And 1 point for Harry Manenti, 39 and 1 for. So that was 3 picks. How about you for the next game, which was the South Australian versus Victorian, more recent game, but what do you think?
So this was South Australia Victoria in the One Day Cup once again. Pretty obvious. I gave Nathan McAndrew 3 votes for his 5 wickets. Jake Lehman for his 85 picked up the 2 votes, and 1 vote to Harry Manenti, who's polled in 2 games straight now. 30 runs and 3 for, did a really good job in the middle order, both in the batting and the bowling innings. So there's my votes in the SA versus Victoria One Day Cup match. So if you had a look at the SA versus Victoria Sheffield Shield game, who got the votes there?
Yeah, look, 3 points for Henry Hunt for the 106 runs, but he was closely followed by Jake Lehman with 2 points. He had 113 runs, outstanding from both those boys. And look, it's going one point for Pope with his 5-4 for the match.
Yeah, now, Lloydie Pope. Yeah, Lloydie Pope, 5 wickets for the match. Did a great job. And looked for everything like he was going to bowl South Australia to a victory on that last day, but not to be.
Yeah, it was a pretty tight call trying to pick out those points, if I'm being completely honest with you, Hookie. But look, let's go over to the Women's Cricket League. As we spoke about, South Australia and Tassie tied this series. What did you make of the first game?
Courtney Webb with 123 not out picked up the 3 votes. Maddie Penner, we've talked about her. 109 from her. She batted superbly. She's such a powerful player. Picked up the 2 votes. And I gave Courtney Neal 1 vote. She only picked up 1 for 35, but in a high-scoring game, that was a really important. She took the new ball, bowled really well, bowled tightly, and just made it almost impossible for Tasmania to reel in such a big total when she bowled so well so early. You looked at the second game, as did I, but I'm interested in your votes. SA Tasmania, take 2. Yep,
3 points for Ellie Johnston. She had about 60-odd. 2 points for AJ Wellington, 3 for 41. And 1 point for Gemma Barsby, 40-odd. I thought that was pretty impressive as well. So they're my 3 points. Look, Cookie, that rounds us up. But I've got to say, Mac Harvey, off to a convincing lead in the Hooked on Sport Player of the Year. I look forward to watching it, but I think that's given him 7 points. No, not quite. 5 points, sorry.
Yeah, five votes for him, and I've got 4 for Jake Lehman, I reckon. Couple for Harry Manenti, Jordan Buckingham with 3, Ellie Johnson with 3, Courtney Webb with 3 as well. So plenty to play for yet. We're only early on, but Mackenzie Harvey, our early leader, on 5 votes.
Yeah, look, Kiki, as always, I've completely enjoyed this 30 minutes with you talking about cricket. I definitely had my work cut out for me. It wasn't as easy as the golf one, I have to admit. But you know what? I'm getting better. I'm loving looking at the cricket, and I can't wait for the rest of this summer.
Well done, Soph. And we said we'll try and keep it to 30 minutes. I'm just looking at the timer I've got running now. We're about to hit 40 minutes. But hey, it's a podcast. We can go as long as we like. Love chatting it with you. You sell yourself short. You know what you're talking about with cricket, and I'm looking forward to getting into more and more issues and some big interviews that we've got lined up over the course of the year. Next week, we turn our attention to golf, and there is so much to talk about as well. And we have got a special lined up for people a little bit later on in the week. We're catching up with Jack Buchanan, who is on the verge of one of the biggest couple of months of his life. He's got Asian Tour tournaments to play, international series tournaments to play, Q School to play, and then he comes back for Australia just for some little events like the Australian PGA and the Australian Open, Soph.
Yeah, Hookie, I can't wait for our listeners to listen to that interview. Jack Buchanan was great to speak to. I did have some internet difficulties, so it was a bit more like a Hookie talking to Jack Buchanan with me just on the side. But that's absolutely fine. I enjoyed listening to every fourth word when it came through. Hookie, thank you so much, and I look forward to speaking to you next week.
Well done, Soph.
That stumps on this episode of the Hooked on Sport Cricket Show. Thanks for listening. Help us reach more cricket-minded people just like you by following us and leaving a review. We look forward to your company next time on the Hooked on Sport Cricket Show.